Smash!
Kitbashing is by far one of the most important pillars in the hobby of miniature painting. The ability to take your miniatures beyond the bounds of a single sprue and instruction manual is a way us hobbyists can step away from simply building by number and truly creating our own characters, aesthetics, and fluff. But you might be asking yourself, what is kitbashing? And how can someone who is completely new to the hobby start doing it? Well, this video is for you. Today we'll be discussing the concept and very basics of kitbashing, as well as the more intermediate methods. We'll talk about mindset on what brings a kitbash to life, but my number one goal for this video is to guarantee that you'll be able to start today after what I've got in store for you. And even if you're not a newcomer, this video will have some tips and tricks that I guarantee will be helpful to you. But before we get into all that good stuff, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, share with a friend, and if you really dig it, consider becoming a channel member. For just $3 a month, you get to see my videos early, and for $5, you get access to weekly Q&A streams in which I'll showcase your models. You also get access to exclusive roles and channels within the Mishmash Discord, and it just really helps me out. Huge thank you to my channel members, you guys are amazing. Also, make sure to hit those affiliate links up in the description to get yourself some discounts on amazing products such as Wargames Atlantic and Galiri. Without further ado, let's talk kitbashing. Now, before we get too ahead of ourselves, what is kitbashing? Well, I'd say it falls under the umbrella of miniature conversion. Kitbashing is essentially just building a model out of two different kits. This can either be rather complex, or it can simply be two different kits from, say, the same army. A great example is Warhammer 40k's Space Marines. Even though there's a lot of changes I'm not a huge fan of with the newer line, it's really easy to kitbash these two things together with older bits because they just fit together that easily. Don't like the helmets? Change the helmets out and you've done your first kitbash. Congratulations. But if you noticed, I did say I'm not a huge fan of Primaris Marines, which is nothing new to my audience, but this ties in nicely to my next point. Why kitbash? Well, kitbashing is really nice for the freedom of expression for your army. If you're going for army play, of course. My favorite part of any wargame is the your dudes aspect. And coming up with your own custom fluff and paint scheme is one thing, but kitbashing really sets that apart. It can be simple, little tweaks here and there, or you can entirely come up with a new design philosophy for your army that sets you apart from everybody else. Come up with your own characters or squad designs, the possibilities are really endless. And not to mention, it can save you quite a bit of money if you use spare bits rather than just buy new parts. I'm not great with this because I like having more toys, but at the end of the day, it can be really nice to just kind of come up with your own figures based on the bunch of junk they have laying around. And though maybe I'm not the best practitioner of my own advice, I quite enjoy hunkering down and cannibalizing my old kits if I don't have anything else to do with them. And not to mention, another good thing about kitbashing is it hones your skills for when things don't go right. I like to pride myself as somebody that really likes to shine during improvisational creativity. Perhaps you clip something incorrectly on the sprue and your model is effectively broken. Well, kitbashing might be the fix, but all this yapping is only doing so much good, so let's talk about how you can actually start kitbashing. Of course, the first thing we gotta yap about are tools. Now, if you're getting into the hobby of miniature painting already, you'll more than likely have a lot of these tools. The essentials for sure are a hobby knife, clippers, plastic, and super glue. It's nice to have super glue and plastic glue because more often than not, I kitbash with an amalgamation of different materials. I'm surprised I don't see this more often, but I will say a hobby drill is definitely an essential on my end. You could put it in the nice to have category, but I think it's too integral to a lot of kitbashes I do. And either a mold line remover or sanding sticks. Preferably both though. I don't really think I need to explain why these are kind of the essentials, because at the end of the day, these are just what you need to get miniatures out of the sprue. Nicely, cleanly, all that. But of course, I did separate a must-have, so surely there is a nice-to-have set of tools. Yeah. First major tool that I would argue is pretty much on the borderline of an essential and a nice-to-have is a nice silicone mat. Not necessarily a cutting mat, but something that holds your cutting mat. Mine in particular has a nice bordered edge to it because I'm a bit of a butterfingers. I cannot begin to tell you how many times I've dropped essential bits in the middle of filming for it to disappear for half a day.
or never return ever again. And mind you, that's with the silicon mat. So make sure to keep your hands over the mat if you're going to be kitbashing or building figures. Also briefly mentioned it, a cutting mat is ideal. I don't think it's 100% needed, but that's kind of because I mainly just use my hobby desk as a hobby desk to begin with. I'm not too worried about getting paint crumbs. But if you care like a normal person, yeah, I'd get a cutting mat. Next thing that I would say is definitely on the nice to have list is tweezers. They're not essential, but I would say they're quite nice for yet again handling very small bits. Especially when you're trying to glue something together. Though I might have dainty little digits, it is kind of a struggle to glue these smaller parts together sometimes. Last thing I'm putting on the list is green stuff and sculpting tools. Green stuff is definitely one of those things I've never been particularly great at, but I would say every hobbyist should at least have a tube or two. Though most of the popular game systems don't typically have a lot of malformations on the models, but it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. I'm also a big enjoyer of resin minis and metal minis for that matter, because I'm kind of a weirdo. So having green stuff around is kind of an essential if there's any issues. And even though I'm not great at sculpting with green stuff, I definitely have a lot of uses for it. Creating textured patterns and little gaps here and there to fill in blank spaces is always something I'm grateful for. So again, I would probably keep it in the back pocket. Also, I figure I add on with a hobby knife, it's always nice to have different sets of blades for different things. Flat blades are great for sanding things down very slightly, having shorter blades is great for adding in bullet holes, and the standard blade is a good all-arounder. And the last item that I think a lot of people sleep on is storage. This is yet another item I probably should have put in the essentials list, but I've already gone back and forth on adding in other items that are probably on the essentials, so I'm keeping it here. Small storage containers are a lifesaver for me. A good habit to do is to clip your sprues clean of all the bits and store them into containers for later usage. I like to organize mine at least to some degree. There are plenty that are just huge boxes full of random miniatures I haven't completed. However, I do like to at least somewhat categorize each bin, whether that be an army I'm working on for one game system or another, or specific parts of certain miniatures. And why not, here's the exact brand that I use, Arco Mills. Not too bad price-wise. But there are other storage containers out there that are definitely useful, like today's sponsor, Tabletop Stronghold, baby. Tabletop Stronghold should be your go-to for balanced budget and quality miniature cases, which can be considered storage containers. I don't want to hear any backsass. The mag case is by all definitions a quality case for keeping your miniatures safe on your trips to the hobby store, and by utilizing the power of magnets, you can hold all the more of your dudes in each slot while keeping them perfectly stationary. No more risk of rattling around and exploding. And to sweeten the deal, you can use my code MASH25 for 25% off your purchase. Now that's a deal. Huge love to Tabletop Stronghold for sponsoring this video. Now, where were we? But now that we've gone over the nice to have and essential tools in your arsenal for kitbashing, I think we should go over the core principles of the subject. Now, we're going to start things out with some basic baby steps, and though they may seem simple, I guarantee you that these simple methods can be just as effective as the far more advanced methods. The first major step for kitbashing, like we briefly mentioned earlier, is the simple swap. Take a miniature that is by all accounts essentially the same as it would be had you built it from the sprue, and swap in details like helmets, weapons, or accessories. The head swap is my bread and butter if you can't tell, and same with clipping in new weapons. Another great thing you can do is do very simple repositions. Say if you have push-fit models and you don't like the way the head is tilted, well, clip out the peg in the bottom and tilt the head to your desire. As you can see with the Stormcast Eternal miniature, I was dryly fitting the headpiece into place before I made any committed moves. This is a crucial practice for kitbashing. Something even I fail to do sometimes, and you end up paying the price if it doesn't fit. Last thing we want to do is mutilate crucial parts. But once I was happy with how the head would be positioned, I decided to commit by using just a touch of Tamiya. Nice thing with Tamiya Thin Cement is the ability to move around pieces before you officially commit to the placing. I'd also end up fiddling with her pose, as I think the base pose is fine, but I do want to differentiate it slightly.
During Adepticon this year, I ended up with 2 boxes of Skaven Tides, so I now have a bunch of duplicate push fits. Of course, I could always do the alternative build in the set, but if I want to run the same unit, I think it's worth taking an extra minute or two to slice off the arm pegs or connecting bits to slightly differentiate the model from its twin. A common and very valid criticism push-fit models have had for years is their dynamic poses. It's not really fun to have more than one. So, by fiddling around just slightly, we can easily differentiate the 2 figures. Though it's not anything crazy, I just moved around the arms a little bit and the head. These little differences really set this figure apart from the base one. Sure, it's not as cool as the original, but it makes the original all that more cool. But now that we're kind of presenting some visual examples, let's switch gears by kitbashing something that utilizes all of the core principles we've gone over. One of my favorite things to do as of late is kitbash Firstborn Space Marines with a combination of the old and the new. The main body I'll be using is a Mark VI Corvus pattern Space Marine from Games Workshop's Horus Heresy line. The first thing I'm doing is carving off the entire torso, as we'll be replacing it with a different pattern of armor. The main reason I'm doing so is the legs provide just a little extra height to the Space Marines, and I felt like changing up the torso for the sake of showing it off. Once it's completely clipped off, we can then clean the edges using our hobby knife. Side note, a hobby saw probably would be better for this, but it's a good visual example on why you don't necessarily need it. Toss another into the nice to have category. Now, once everything is in place, I will now dryly fit the new torso onto the body, this being from the Mark IV set. As you can see, the older kits have a much more simple design philosophy. Torso and legs fit together very easily, so by simply adding a little bit of Tamiya, we can glue these 2 pieces together and they look rather seamless. But though these 2 pieces fit together incredibly well, it is important to take advantage of the best points of contact for bits so you can have the best possible adherence. However, after attaching the arms from the base set onto the torso, things are looking rather good. Now for our main focal point of the model, this being the helmet. Since I'm primarily building for a Sons of Medusa army, I want each of my Space Marines to have a little bit more of a techie flair to it. So I ended up using one of the heads from the Devastators kit. Now when I say focal point, that doesn't necessarily mean your kitbash or things that you change about it need to be super dramatic. It's just a better terminology for everything we've discussed so far. Different weapons, different helmets, or completely changing the figure. It's also fun to utilize your hobby drill by drilling in little bullet holes here and there. But if you've noticed or kept track, we've used 3 different kits for one figure. You might think that's quite a lot of kits, that adds up obviously. But for one, I purchased most of my stuff off of eBay, and 2, I think it's all the more reason that I like to keep coherent with my kit bashes. All 3 of those kits are the same army. That way I can cannibalize all 3 kits together to create my own figures. And at that point, if there's a kitbash I want to make that really only requires 1 bit from a singular set, it's better to get the bit from a third party like eBay or a friend. However, I do want to rewind really quickly to something I mentioned while building this figure. Taking advantage of the best possible adherence is very important, and a great way to do so is pinning. Now, I'm incredibly guilty for not utilizing this method enough. For the unanointed, pinning is a relatively simple process. It's exactly like how it sounds. What I'm doing is drilling a hole into 2 separate pieces, and as a way of binding each piece together, I'm using just a little bit of paperclip, though you can use wire. I personally prefer the paperclip as it is a very, very strong bond. In our first piece, I'll be connecting a bit of paperclip, and I'll be trimming it to size to fit for the other piece. Since both of these plastic parts are, well, plastic, I could use Tamiya. However, when gluing these kinds of parts together, I suggest super glue. Then once I have my super glue applied, I can then fit the 2 together, and it's pretty much a guarantee that they won't break apart if I have butterfingers and drop the figure to the floor. Sure, it's a little bit of extra work, and hey, I'm guilty of not doing it myself, but this is a worthy time sink. Speaking of methods I really do need to utilize more, using green stuff is a really good habit to get into. And like I said, it's not really a necessity, but an especially good thing to learn for kitbashing is simply using green stuff to fill in gaps, creating simple straps or capes, or even fur patterns, as they're quite easy to sculpt. If you've been with the channel for a while, you'll probably know that I've been saying I need to get better with green stuff for almost 2 years now, but at the very least I try to integrate green stuff with these basic uses. And honestly, doing more of the sculpting aspects would be for more fun rather than needing to use it. However, I won't make excuses. Eventually down the line I'd love to make a green stuff episode, but that'll be later down the line. But since we're in the same neighborhood, and I'm kinda surprised I didn't bring it up until now, is the usage of Spru goo. Now, what the hell is Spru goo if you're not familiar? Well, Spru goo is essentially Tamiya thin cement mixed with some of the plastic you use on the sprue. Basically, you just mix it up together until it forms a goo-like substance, and you can easily fill in the cracks of your models using this newfound mixture. This is something I use quite often, and it's really not that hard to make. Whenever I restock my thin cement, I usually like to get 2 so I can use one as a Spru goo container. Considering you are using Tamiya thin cement, you'll have to be careful when using this, and you'll want it more on the thicker side. It's better to have an extra container of regular Tamiya to thin it out as you go, rather than just completely cover a model and melt it away. I know this seems a little weird and maybe even a tiny bit complicated, but I assure you it's quite the opposite, and it is more than worth your time. Green stuff is nice, and while the waiting time isn't necessarily that much different, but I like the aspect of Spru goo being able to instantaneously be applied to a model rather than having to wait for green stuff to dry into a state where I can use it. But before we get too into the weeds, the last little thing I want to talk about is scratch building. Now, some people might say this is too advanced for a novice hobbyist, but I find it to be a great habit to get into. Scratch building some random figures out of any sort of bits you have lying around is definitely one of my favorite things to do when I don't really have any direction for what I'm trying to go for. Usually this is just a therapeutic exercise for trying to fit in different pieces into different places. Of course, be wise with your bits. You don't want to randomly just throw on some parts that you know that you'll have better uses for later, but it's great practice for when you really want to build something that you know is going to be special. I could do a video on scratch building alone, however, I've done plenty of it on the channel in the form of my last war videos, so if you want to see a raw example, check those out. But now that we've covered all the bases for the basics of kit bashing, let's do just a quick review before we wrap things up. The biggest key takeaways I want you to have are to dry fit everything. Keep those bits organized, don't cut deeper than you think you need to. The biggest mistakes are from going in too fast and gung-ho and trying to do too much at once. And always remember, sometimes less is more. It's a lot like painting at the end of the day. Sure, it might be 2 different hobbies with very different aspects, but there's a lot of lessons you can learn from being an artist in general. But that's pretty much all I got for you today. I hope this video was helpful to you, and if it was, obviously make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Those quick few seconds can really make a difference. I've got plenty of videos that are coming up in the same vein as this video, so make sure to keep tuned in. And let me know, especially in the comments, if there's any ideas or things you want me to tackle in this format. But I'm definitely flapping my beak enough for one video, so remember to mishmash, kit bash, and paint some fantastic miniatures. But you're gonna. I promise. See ya.